welcome to the Nausea River podcast. I'm Theo Morgan, and I'm a really bad advocate for band success, apparently. So much for my podcast's mission. But yeah, I loved this specific scenario. When bands self-sabotage and drop an album with little to no hype or promo or singles leading up to it. New York City avant-garde death metal outfit Piron did that last year for Exhaust, and it sneakily became one of my top albums of 2024. I think Piron had the small cult following to make it work, though, and at the end of the day, they all have real jobs and 6 trillion side projects from vocalist Doug Moore. Anyways, I was pretty surprised when Worcester's Fallen Monarch did the same thing back in September. Mostly because I had talked with Fallen Monarch back in May, and they were hoping for support from a label. It's a hard task, but I believed in them. I still think there's a big potential audience out there, untapped because of the endless options on Bandcamp and limits of DIY promotion. Blackened deathcore and metalcore might not be my first genre pick, but deathcore has remained a much more popular and relevant genre than I thought it would. I was there for the MySpace days after all. I thought deathcore would die once everyone took out their 00 gauge plugs. And Abigail Williams abandoned the idea of blackened metalcore pretty quickly, though honestly I think that move was the best for them. But today, like 75% of the Palladium shows are still deathcore. And if you're playing the main room, that's a good fucking audience. Could easily be over 1,000 people. Most of my favorite bands aren't doing that. And credit where credit's due, Fallen Monarch avoid a lot of the pitfalls of the genre. Lots of solid riffing with a sprinkle of black metal tremolo picks, good production that doesn't get too slick, and breakdowns that don't feel forced. Sounds pretty good. So who is Fallen Monarch anyways? So, I always start with an introduction. Who are you?
I'm Adam. I yell in Fallen Monarch.
And what is Fallen Monarch?
Fallen Monarch is, we are a blackened deathcore band, I guess is the best summation of what we do here in central Massachusetts. We've been around now technically like 5 years, going on 6 years, because we formed right before the pandemic started. So the early months of that band were a weird one because it was just kind of us like emailing files back and forth because we couldn't even get together in person. So that's why it didn't even really I think publicly unveil the band till like the end of 2021 when we released our first EP.
Meet Adam Cutler, the vocalist for Fallen Monarch. I was hoping Kyle Larkins, their drummer, would get on too, but that's only because we're pals. If no labels would take a chance on Fallen Monarch, then I will. We discussed the making of The Reflecting Grave and the ups and downs of releasing it independently. I hope you enjoy. Did you utilize like Zoom or other conferencing software to make practice happen, or was it just like very analog?
Yeah, we didn't. I mean, like we use Discord for all our band chats.
Okay.
But I mean, like in terms of actual like, because at the time we were still writing, we were still kind of trying to figure out like what the band would even be, because I mean, we come from pretty diverse musical backgrounds too, and even like when I first came into the band, I only knew one of the other guys previously. Like, so like I had never met Kyle, our drummer. I had never met Ricky, our guitar player. And our other guitar player, Dan, wasn't even in the band yet. Like it was, we were around for a few months before we kind of brought him into the fold. So it was very much that period of like feeling each other out and trying to understand sort of, okay, we know what each other likes, but like, what does it mean when it coalesces into whatever this new project is? So it was honestly a lot of like passing guitar profiles and tablature and stuff back and forth and kind of picking apart songs and learning about the kind of idiosyncrasies of what each other like. And it was a weird blessing in disguise of, it was obviously a very weird time when we were all locked in our houses, but it kind of, I think because it forced us to really take our time with what the band was going to be, it allowed us to have a much sharper kind of definition of what we wanted it to be by the time we like unveiled it publicly, because otherwise we probably would have been like rushing to play shows and just get music out to just have the excitement of it being a new thing and wanting to just get involved in the scene as quickly as possible. So the patience ended up being a benefit, I think.
That's pretty cool. So how would you describe your background before Fallen Monarch?
So I've been in a handful of bands over the years. Mostly as a guitar player. Like, I mean, when I was in, because I mean, I'm pushing 40 myself. So like I've been doing this for 25-ish years. maybe close to 30 in terms of being in bands. And so like when I first started playing, I was like playing guitar in new metal bands, moving on to more like by the time I moved from Maine, where I grew up, to just outside Boston, was when I shortly after that started playing in a band called Widow Sunday, which like we were pretty active around for a while, and more kind of a mix of like electronica and metalcore,
Mhm.
before a lot of bands were doing that. So it's like one of those things we look at now, we're like, wow, if we had been a few years later, we probably would have been more
No,
successful.
no, in the 2020s, you'd have been huge.
Yep, and yeah. Meanwhile, we were doing that in 2009, so it wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't
Yeah,
as I guess well received.
metalcore was way different then.
It very much was.
And,
So we
like,
were we were kind of like odd band out in pretty much everything we ever did. But we released a few albums. Like, all our stuff is still on Spotify.
okay.
And then like it's we that band kind of has we're like not officially like broken up, but just kind of like stopped really doing anything
Hmm.
because everybody's busy doing other stuff. And then most recently, before being in Fallen Monarch, I was playing guitar for a hardcore band called Trading Heroes for Ghosts that is no longer a thing. But was actually doing both bands concurrently for a little bit. And but yeah, being a vocalist was different. Like I had done it a little bit a couple times. Like I sang for this kind of like really short-lived genty band, maybe like 10 or so years ago, called I Invent. But that was really the only time I had spent as like a singer. And when our bass player Jim reached out to me, to see how I felt about this project, it was to be a vocalist, and because I think he had heard me in that project, and so I was kind of at the time was like, yeah, I'm playing guitar and something else, so it's like, sure, I'll try picking up a microphone again and seeing how that pans out. And yeah, it's ended up being a fulfilling challenge, I think is how I would qualify it, being the vocalist of this band, because they write challenging music, and it's fulfilling a role in a project that I'm not as comfortable in has been, and like especially like being like the face and the front
Hmm.
man, and kind of like leading things from a live perspective even, it's been a lot of new territory for me, but I've been enjoying it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like if it's something you've just improved on over the years, but both times I've seen you live, you're a very natural frontman. Like, very, very animated and locked in.
Thanks. I've always
Um,
I do, even as a guitar player, like performance has always been super important to me.
mhm.
Of just not being a goldfish on stage, and really just engaging with the energy of a crowd and providing energy, regardless of the size of the crowd and the venue and whatever it is. Because I just playing live is my favorite part of playing music, hands down, amongst
Mhm.
all the activities that come with being in a band, from rehearsing to writing to recording to all those things. Like being on stage is kind of the thing that makes it all worth it for me specifically, and so I try to really put that all forward. And especially now, I guess, that I've learned to embrace being unencumbered by a guitar, because the first few shows I did feel very, like, I don't know what to do with my hands. I'm like, I'm not holding an instrument. And so I've kind of loosened up a bit in that respect, but appreciate you saying that. And I'm glad it comes across of the energy I try to put out, as the vocalist.
Yeah. So you said you had a lot of like weird and diverse influences from all the other guys in Fallen Monarch. Which one out of anyone do do you think like offered the most off the wall one? Because you can say Fallen Monarch is blackened deathcore, but there's like a lot of prog in there, a lot of metalcore. It's like very new, but oddly nostalgic.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear you say that. I think
Yeah.
the prog definitely comes from Kyle, who I know our
Hmm.
drummer. That's his bread and butter. That's what he really enjoys. He, with all positivity, likes to overcomplicate stuff as much as he can. But I think there's a nice balance of that with some of like what the rest of us will bring to the table. And I think, you mentioned some of the nostalgia too, and it's most of our material kind of starts with our guitar player Ricky, like especially the earliest stuff, like almost exclusively came from him. And all of Ricky's experience prior to Fall Monarch was like that kind of like early 2010s deathcore, like
Hmm.
Job for a Cowboy, Suicide Silence, like all that kind of prototypical MySpace era stuff was just like completely where he existed in. So I think he still brings some of that influence into what we write now, but hopefully I think with a bit more of a contemporary spin on things. And I like that we're kind of like difficult to pin down. I think when it really kind of comes down to brass tacks of because it's also like I don't do the kind of like low guttural stuff that you might expect from a
Mhm.
lot of more like deathcore and death metal leaning things because it's not really my anatomy. First of all, I'm just not particularly good at it. Um, but I think it kind of like adds a different spin and like we don't tune quite as low as a lot of bands in our space do. Not even intentionally, just because Dan and Ricky just didn't really want to tune that low. We may experiment with it in the future, but those are just kind of all things I think have led to a bit more of a unique spin on what we're trying to do. And I know in terms of like kind of left field influence, like I've tried to bring in some of my love of like doom and sludge music. And I know Jim has started to really gravitate towards that as well and enjoyed a lot of those bands. Like we're listening to super drony stuff like Bell Witch and, like things that not even really even remotely close to what we're doing. But I think there is still space to bring in some of that like texturally and focus more on depth to the sound, not through complexity, but through layering and even repetition in that case, and kind of slow builds, much like that
Mhm.
kind of music does. And there's a couple little spots on our record that we just put out that I think hint at that, but I think we'll probably play a little bit more with some of that in the future because I think it's fun and I think it's a challenge to put that kind of influence against, purely like tech death or like very
Mhm.
proggy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like Doom and Sludge, that's my listening bread and butter.
Nice.
Yeah. I didn't quite pick it up on the album, but I can sort of see where you're coming from, especially with Sludge. Like, being a closer cousin of metalcore than people want to admit.
There's a lot of it there. I mean, it's even like it's all riffs, and I'm like yeah, like you look at something like Iron Monkey, and like
Mhm.
yeah, it's not it's different, but like it's still riff driven.
Yeah, I
So
think it's also
there's
just like
similarities.
there's a definitely a strain of Sludge that also borrows a lot from hardcore.
I think so too, because I mean, like obviously, like here in Massachusetts, look at a band like Chained at the Bottom of the
Yeah.
Ocean, who like I think they very much fit in that like death doom space, but they almost feel kind of like that a gateway band to me in the most positive way in terms of 'cause I mean my first exposure to that band was they were all playing with the Acacia Strain, which felt
Hmm.
like a very left field thing, but I remember I was stoked walking in and not even knowing they were playing and hearing those kinds of riffs
I
expecting an Acacia Strain show. I was very excited.
no, I didn't know about that tour, but I can see that. That makes sense to me. But like I think the biggest one like is I Hate God. And
Sure,
they're like,
yeah.
they're one of the biggest names in sludge, but like when I saw them live recent like I always knew they had a hardcore sound and followed a lot of hardcore bands and socials and like always had like toured with hardcore bands. I
Hmm.
didn't quite uh realize how much of like it was just like a hardcore show with sludge metal.
Yeah, for
Like the
sure.
crowd was very hardcore.
It's funny because when I was playing in Trading Heroes for Ghosts, like we were a beat down hardcore band and we opened for I Hate God,
Yeah.
which felt very strange to us, but then like we did the show and it actually fit surprisingly well. I mean, it was kind of a weird bill anyway, because I think it was I Hate God, Bat, Come to Grief, and Escuela Grind. So it was
That all
already
fit
pretty all over the place. So we were
it
like,
all
all right,
fits
sure.
though.
It does, yeah. It made sense, and those
Yeah.
are I mean, those are always my favorite bills to see. Even Fallen Monarch, it's kind of our favorite bills to play, where it's like it's not just blast beats for
Hmm.
4 hours. It's like you get like some diversity to sound, but like I guess like ideological synchronicity to a degree. Like
Yeah.
we've done a friend of ours named Brian who he did some really photo work for us, and he has a solo drone off like kind of folky drone project called Oak up in kind of the Lakes region of New Hampshire. And he booked some really cool diverse shows like that like he's brought us up to play on. Like the last one he did that we played, it was like kind of alternating solo drone noise sets with like kind of full bands. So it would be
Hmm.
like it was like a noise set and then us and then a noise set and then like bedtime magic, and so like just super weird. And but again, like it was all adventurous enough and forward thinking enough that it made sense, even though like the pinpointed genres themselves might have been a little bit scattershot.
The last few episodes I've done, whether like released or in the works, like we've always talked about like weird cross-genre bills. Are there any other like notable bills that Fallen Monarch has played on? Because I've seen you with bands that you might not sound exactly like them, but I can see why you were booked with them. It's not just, oh, they're your friends.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
it's usually both, but because you saw us at O'Brien's when we played the Sky Pillars first show,
yeah,
right?
Sky Pillar
Yep.
and My Missing Half, and
Hmm.
it's not just that Kyle was in My Missing Half.
Yes. Yeah.
It fit, and like you fit even better like between Spiral Continuum and Hex Rot.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah, that
That
basement
was
show. Yep. That was an incredible show. I had a lot of fun. I mean, I think most of the band shares my opinion that like if a show is not at a traditional venue, then we will almost 100% say yes. Like, cause we just like playing weird, like
yeah.
if it's a basement or a hall or wherever. And like, yeah, that especially with the lineup for sure, where it's like, goes from like Spiral Continuum, who is kind of like that tech death space, to us, to Hex Rot, which is like,
Weirdo death metal.
yeah, I was like, yeah, Hexrot strikes me as like a more death metal inclined portrayal of guilt kind of
Yeah,
vibe of
I
like,
didn't want to say it to. I interviewed them earlier. I didn't want to say it to their face, but like I think they were very interesting because those two guys both come from like a screamo and hardcore
Yeah,
background,
you can see that for sure. Yeah,
and like
I got a little bit of that like
there's
frail
that
body kind of vibe
yeah, and
almost in some of their material.
like it's really cool to hear death metal that has the bones of screamo.
100%. Yeah, of like actual screamo.
Yeah,
Like there's
like
I
old
feel like there's the
yeah,
hot
they're
topic perception of screamo and the
yeah,
real
like
perception of
these
screamo.
are just like one it's still like some of the most interesting music I've heard this year. But you
They're
were
really, really
too.
cool.
But you were too. Like there's a lot there's a lot of good stuff coming out of Massachusetts this year. I have like a whole like rate your music list of it.
It's pretty overwhelming. Yeah, of like we're good friends with Pathogenic. Like they put a full
Mhm.
record out.
Yeah, that was kind of like the almost the
Yeah, because
start of the
it
year
was
because
pretty early in the year.
there
Yeah, because
just
I remember.
wasn't much coming out in January. So first
Yeah.
week of February, stuff started rolling in,
Hmm.
and and I was I was pumped. New Pathogenic records, really good, very relentless, good
Yeah,
to
that.
listen to while you're cooking.
Oh, yeah, I get that. Yeah, yeah. That's a good way to describe what those guys do is relentless, but like a
Yeah.
lot of depth too. And like it's funny. You mentioned like I guess more notable bills we played. Like I think it was our third show ever. Was Pathogenic's first show back after like a long time where they hadn't
Mhm.
played at all. And so like honestly, that was huge for us just from knowing those guys forever and uh, the fact that they like asked us to open that show was at the time an extremely new band, meant a lot to us.
Mhm.
And that was also Sammy's Patio in Revere, which is a venue that was very near and dear to all our hearts. We played there several times before they closed, unfortunately. But love that place, and so yeah, that was a meaningful one to be asked to play. Other shows we've done. I mean, like you said, I feel like we've played with a lot of different bands that I guess on paper you may not immediately think is the kind of band we would be booked with. Like we were able to play with my old friends that I Will Be Done, one of the first shows they had done in a while. That was really cool. Gosh, so many. Yeah, we played with My Missing Half a few times now. Played with Epicenter a few times. Just it's yeah, people we've known forever. That it helps to have that friendship link, but then
Mhm.
it's also I think enough musical similarities for it to make sense, but also it does seem kind of weird because we are, we do kind of fall in that space where I feel like frequently we play a bill and we're either way more like beat downy and break downy than all the other metal bands playing who are just shredding, or we're like way more technical than all the like breakdown heavy hardcore bands that we're playing with.
Yeah,
So
that's an interesting thing to be in the middle of because,
yeah.
I've been a metalhead for a very long time and I remember that metalcore would get shat on
Uh-huh. I think it
by
still does to a degree.
yeah. I didn't know like I didn't know like if I felt like it had tempered, but I think it's because everyone I knew got older and
I
like
think that's part of it. Yeah.
they probably never liked metalcore, and even I have like mixed feelings on it sometimes. It just depends on the band.
I think it does, I think my, you know, authenticity is the most important thing to me with any music. Because I
Hmm.
mean, I especially as I've gotten older, like I listen to more and more that's not just heavy music, um, but even like the various subgenres that exist within metal and
Hmm.
hardcore. It's it feels so much more freeing as a listener to not like not feel kind of a predetermined judgment of like, oh, I can't listen, I like have a hard line that I don't like black metal or that I don't like metalcore, and then like kind of like shutting out an entire genre when it's like, well, there's going to be bright spots within anything.
Hmm.
There's going to be a lot of kind of run of the mill, not that great stuff too, but like I think anything has something to offer fundamentally, and I know I've felt better even creatively from just being more open to consuming everything, because I mean I think these days I probably listen to electronic music more than I listen to metal in terms of like synth wave and dark wave and that kind of stuff, um, which then kind of I think gives me a fresher perspective coming in and like writing metal, because I'm not as I'm not just inundating myself with it at all times. I'm not saying I don't listen to heavy music, but uh, I do think I find myself more like most times casually, like if I'm drawing or driving or whatever, it's like it's probably a bit more chill than like Despised Icon. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you feel like an accepted part of the local metal scene?
We do. We're all a bit older,
True.
and like we're all a bit older, and transparently, like we're not trying to make it a career. Like we all have careers already and families and lives, and so we take what we do very, very seriously, but we're not trying to like go on tour. And in fact, we play in a pretty limited capacity.
Hmm.
So I think because of that, we've never been particularly tuned into like being part of any particular scene or like accepted in this group or that group, and pretty much divorce ourselves, I think, from any potential like drama within that. But that's all to say that like I don't see a ton of that in New England, especially anyway.
Hmm.
I mean, I think it always does exist to some degree, and like maybe it's just because we are a bit blind to it because we don't care. But I feel like every show we play, I mean, we love it if we get booked on a gig and we don't even know who the other bands are. Like we'll be like, because that's just an opportunity
Hmm.
to hear something cool and interesting and meet some new people. And I think that openness, is something that comes around and is returned to us in terms of acceptance. Like we can tell when we're going into a particular bill where we're like, oh yeah, we're kind of odd band out on this one. Like don't really know maybe how we'll get received, but it's something I see pretty equally. I'm curious if you do too, in both bands and fandom in general. And you mentioned, I think, kind of like a bit more openness to genres from listeners these days, and I do think that's accurate. Probably thanks in no small part to just how easy it is to access all music in
Hmm.
2025. I think that's led to younger and younger audiences having broader and broader um, kind of spectrums of music they appreciate. I mean, look at like what did Knocked Loose played like Coachella? Wasn't that what it was? Like one of those big like norm like not a place you would expect to see a hardcore band.
Yeah, I'd actually see because like part of me wants to say no, it wasn't quite Coachella, but Knocked Loose
It was something
Festivals
big. Yeah.
2025.
It wasn't this year. It was like within the past couple of years. It's like I don't know if it was like Coachella or Bonnaroo or like one of those like bigger music fests where you just like don't expect to see a
Oh, they
band
were
like
they were
that.
at Coachella in
Okay, yeah.
2023.
Because yeah, I remember like seeing footage of that, and it's just like but like people loving it. And honestly, I think people can say what they will about a band like Sleep Token, but I was like, gosh, what that band's doing in terms of like exposing a much broader audience to like at least some gateway towards heavy music and heavier music, I think that's only a net positive in terms of awareness.
Yeah, I keep mentioning for some reason I keep mentioning Sleep Token in interviews because like I have very mixed feelings on their music. I like that they are an accepted part of my normal friends playlists. Like because it hits I don't want to listen to a whole Sleep Token album. I've done it and like I find myself frustrated like throughout most of it because there's always I didn't listen to the latest one because apparently even some apologists were like, I don't know.
Yeah, it didn't really do it for me
But like
much
I
either,
know
the newest one.
Take Me Back to Eden. Like I have a friend out in Michigan, so you can't terrestrially get her radio show, but she does a radio show for for a a hard rock station in Michigan.
Mhm.
And you know, she was talking up Sleep Token. She plays like enough entry level metal, like plenty of Metallica and stuff. Um, and she said like you know this will bridge our interests. Give it a listen. And I'm like
Yeah.
this. I'm like there are plenty of moments I didn't like. There was the occasional moment where like this is vaguely converge like.
Sure, I could see that a little bit. Yeah, that like they're one of those it's I won't go so far as like the people that you get really up in arms and they're like, oh, Sleep Token isn't a metal band. And I'm like, I would approach that more the way of like, I think calling them a metal band is a little reductive. I think they're a band with metal elements, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
and
But
like there are a lot of I think I think it I think it's a useful label to say like something isn't metal but has metal elements. Big one, Queens of the Stone Age, also one of my favorite bands.
love Queens of the Stone Age. Yep.
They there are sometimes there will be a riff. It's just like you could put that on a stoner metal record.
Oh, 100%.
But I think like on the whole, no, I would not call Queens of the Stone Age a metal band. They are a more palatable Caius offshoot.
Yeah, man, which I think is exactly how what Josh designed
Yeah,
it to be in
exactly.
they actually the Johnny Booth, a metalcore band from Long Island,
Hmm.
they did a cover of Ain't Worth a Dollar, but I Feel Like a Millionaire, and like, oh,
Oh,
it is excellent.
I actually do need to listen to that because like I remember first starting to get into harsher music and I put on songs for the deaf for the first time because my dad had just discovered Queens of the Stone Age. This was probably it's like kind of in between Lullabies to Paralyze and Era Vulgaris.
Hmm.
I put that on and that like that opening track is such a
It
good
hits
hook
hard.
in. And like Songs for the Deaf is still like one of my top 10 albums of all time. It is a classic, no mistakes, all
100%. There's
bangers,
yeah, no skips on songs for that.
thematically
Yeah.
consistent, really makes you think.
Yeah, I'm a big Rated R fan too. I like Rated R
Yes.
a lot. That was my first exposure to that band. I remember getting because like I have an older half brother, but he didn't grow up with me, so like I kind of reached where I could for exposure to like new music and new metal specifically. And I remember getting at Best Buy a compilation CD called The Hard and the Heavy, and I don't remember why I bought it. I think it's just because I saw I'm like, oh, like these sound like bands I'm supposed to like. I think it was probably the my
Mhm.
perception. Like that was like, yeah, Queens of the Stone Age was on it, but like there was a lot of way heavier stuff on it, especially for the time too. There was like because gosh, that was my first exposure to Slipknot, to Static X, to Seven Dust, to Sepultura, like to Fear Factory. There was so much stuff on this compilation record that I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is the scene I need to get into.
That sounds like the most 2000 compilation of all
Yeah,
time.
it definitely was. It was, yeah, this was probably like 2001, 2002-ish era, somewhere around there. Maybe even 2000 specifically. I don't have to date myself too much, but
Yeah, I thought like Rated R was 2000, so
yeah, that's true. Yeah, because then yeah,
that could
that
make so 2000 2001 would make sense for me.
yeah, because I think
But
it was the I'm trying to think it was like Seven Dust's second record too, which was like 99. So like yeah, I think that probably was 2000 or 2001.
yeah, Rated R is all like honestly the stretch from Rated R to Songs for the Deaf to Lullabies to Paralyze, like no very few bands are gonna do that kind of three album run.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I even think I think the newer stuff is cool too. I like the experimentation they did on the like three newest records specifically. Like Something I really enjoyed about In Times New Roman is something that I don't think is prevalent enough on in metal specifically is the fearlessness to like allow from a production value and tonal standpoint, allow the songs to sound very different from each other. Because like even like that album specifically, I remember was like listening to it the first time and I had to keep looking, being like, oh, did it like switch to an older Queens of the Stone Age album and I didn't realize it? Like, oh no, this is still all on Times New Roman. They just like specifically made all the songs sound super different. And I think it's a bit of a drastic example, but you look at I think how unfortunately like mechanical a lot of contemporary
Hmm.
metal can be and like the waveform of a song is just like a solid block and I'm like there's no like I wish and like I think we're guilty of this to a degree too. We tried to do a few interesting things on our record, but I think there should be an increased fearlessness to like not have everything be quite so like mechanically uniform on every
Hmm.
metal album and like allow it to because honestly a big thing for us when we were working on the Reflecting Grave is that we wanted it to sound like humans were playing this music like it I think the very very tight uh overly produced vibe works for some things but with what we're trying to do and like there's so much raw emotion in the songs we write and especially like how I try to perform them vocally even on recording that it would feel like a disservice to kind of the sonic palette that we're trying to produce if it was like super super
Hmm.
um almost mistake free. Like even just like letting me like, okay, cool. Like some guitar feedback can squeak through a little bit here.
Hmm.
Like that's okay. And uh, our EP had programmed drums primarily for budgetary reasons,
Oh
but
yeah.
but Kyle did track the drums for the Reflecting Grave, and
Hmm.
I think it's obvious.
Yeah,
It's
it does sound a lot. I still liked the EP, but I thought the Reflecting Grave was a massive improvement.
I would hope so because
But
there's a lot of
yeah.
time between those two records.
Yeah. But speaking of the Reflecting Grave, you released it. It's a new album. Brief overview for the curious.
Yeah, so yeah, it's just over a month now. It's been out. It was a long time coming for us. Some of these songs on this record could have been on our first EP that came out back in 2021. But we knew pretty early on that we wanted, after we released that first EP, Turmoil, to sort of be an introduction to the band that was just the three songs. We knew that the next thing we put out, we wanted it to be a full length just because of the natural kind of cadence and storytelling of how we could already tell the songs fitting together. And we're like, okay, we're going to need that runway to kind of effectively get across the vibe that we're trying to get across with this. And so that led to us working on that record for probably too long. But it is finally out. It was about a 2-year process, recording, mixing, re-recording, writing, all that kind of stuff. Because the first thing we recorded for it was drums, and that was in June of 2023. So it was a process, but I'm glad that we took the time to do that. We're very proud of it. We feel very strongly about the songs and how they've been arranged on the album and because it's something that we really felt like if we're going to release an album like we want it to really lend itself to being consumed as that as like a full piece to really like get the most impact. I mean it's I understand pragmatically how things work in the streaming age and that songs will be
Hmm.
certainly listened to one as one-offs, but really our focus the whole time was as that kind of solid cohesive collection of songs with the ebbs and flows of tones and lyrics and content and vibe and all of that. And we think we did it pretty well. Like it feels weird that it's a collection of songs that was so personal to us for a long time. And like now it's, as with any art, it's out. So it's not art, just ours anymore. Like it's everybody's and hearing, especially for me, this being the biggest piece of music that I've ever released lyrically, uh, seeing kind of how those pieces are connecting with folks, and already seeing some kind of profound impact some of what I've written is having on some people that have reached out to me is pretty wild. But it's a heavy album, both, conceptually and musically. I think we're a relatively, we talked about the term unrelenting earlier in regards to pathogenic, and I think we're unrelenting in terms of just kind of being relatively bleak. Like there's not much happy about our music or what I write
No.
lyrically, but that's kind of purposeful. I think this is probably the most humorless band I've ever been in, but like that's okay. We kind of intended it to be that way. Um, and yeah, it's just it seeing people's reactions to it has been great. We should have our vinyl of it in hand pretty soon. We have a release show next month for like when we're going to have that first available, but like our pre-orders are up and everything. So having the physical component of the album, I think will be a good kind of nice little check mark on it for us to be like, okay, cool. Like this is the thing. Like we can move on. I mean, we already have plans of kind of what we want to do next, and there's a lot of kind of other balls in the air. And it's really as excited as we are to have it out, I think there is a bit of freedom that comes with that in terms of we're like, okay, cool, like record, like this is out, like we're freed up to like do something different now, and we don't necessarily have to, like we're definitely not going to do another full length album right away. Like that's
No.
not going to happen. So we've got ideas for what the next releases will be, but it's nice to feel like we can be a bit more adventurous with what that's going to be and not just put out like an EP that seems like it's more material that just could have been on this record. We want to be honest to the vision we've worked on, but like make sure we're continuing to evolve and challenge ourselves and do interesting things.
Cool. You mentioned the lyrics. This is my confession. I'm very bad at picking out lyrics like in
I am
songs.
too, honestly.
And no, I did not listen with the lyric sheet. So what songs lyrics are you the most proud of on the record?
I'm very proud of I think Walking Ghost Phase is one that sticks out to me. It's a pretty personal song. More around, I guess, kind of my own nihilistic views of sort of like what happens when we die. I'm of the opinion nothing. So it's kind of reconciling with that, especially in terms of sort of the fear of like leaving people you love behind. Like for me, like my first to mind is always my wife. But since writing that song, I've become a parent. So like
Mhm.
now that kind of adds a whole other layer to it when I even like perform that song live. And it's one that I won't blow up anybody's spot, but like people like we've had at least one person that has been going through something pretty difficult
Mhm.
talk to us about that and like how that song kind of really hit him hard for those same reasons. So I don't think it's unique to me of trying to write ambiguously enough that people can kind of get whatever they need to get out of a song. Like I said, when you release the thing and it's no longer just yours, I can't get mad if someone interprets a song a certain way. I mean, I guess I could get mad if someone interpreted a song to be something kind of terrible that I theologically don't believe in. But which I would hope they wouldn't be able to with what I hope I haven't put any of those seeds out there. But in terms of like, I want, whatever you get out of the material and like, especially if it resonates with you and it helps you, if it's not a specific situation that I was trying to write about, then I don't take offense to that by any means. And I think that I tried to keep, I mean, it's far from a concept album, but I tried to keep it, kind of a through line with the lyrics for the record. So it did kind of make sense is that, that idea of the reflecting grave of, you're kind of like, you're at the end of your life. It's sort of
Mhm.
that, your life flashing before your eyes kind of thing, staring at death and seeing everything behind you, um, in both who you are, how you felt, things you've experienced, things that angered you, things that you felt powerless to have control over. You know, it's all kind of the themes of the record, which feels like a pretty, it felt like a logical evolution from Turmoil, because Turmoil was all just kind of that direct, like, we're locked inside, the world is insane,
Mhm.
what is happening?
Yeah, I don't want to say like, oh, you are a pandemic band. How's that feeling?
I mean, it's kind of that. I mean, I think we aren't now, but like that's how it started. It was, which, not that it was started with the intent of that, because I think we literally started the band in March of 2020. So it was like, I think we had gotten together a couple times. We're like, okay, this seems like it could be something cool. Like, let's see where this goes. Then the news came out and we're like, oh, I guess we can't jam for a couple weeks. Lo and behold, it went longer.
Yeah.
But it's, at this point, we don't, we don't really think about that period that much anymore. Uh, now
Yeah,
that we've grown beyond it, I guess.
yeah, it's weird to think about like if you were any kind of creative then what pandemic art was looking like. Because I'm not a musician, but my hobby before this was creative writing.
Okay.
And I was trying to get something off the ground. And I think I was just trying to read a pandemic like that I was locked inside because like it was just like focused on clubs, like the club scene of a fictional city. Like I could not get past situations that would involve the characters being in a nightclub again.
I mean, utilizing it as an escapism makes sense. I mean, I'm also, I'm an illustrator and a graphic designer for my day job. And so like trying to do that amongst the pandemic too was difficult too, because so much of the work I do is within the music industry, and no, or rather not no, but not a lot of bands were doing stuff at the time. So that did kind of become that weird period where I'm like, wow, so much of my creative output as a person is tied into things that aren't happening right now. So I got to figure out something to do as more of an
Yeah.
escape. And lo and behold, I started painting board game miniatures. So that was fun.
Like as a hobby or
Yeah,
like
yeah,
just
yeah,
I don't
just
know
as
if
a
you're like
hobby.
selling them or something.
No, 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 no. I kept that one just as for pleasure. So,
No, like it does. I don't know if I have the dexterity for that, but I've definitely had friends who are into board game miniature painting, and there's something like there's something kind of zen about it.
100%, especially because like the way I was doing it too was like I wanted to make as little decisions as possible. I'm like give
Yeah,
me some YouTube tutorials on these specific ones. Tell me what colors to use, and I'll do it. And
yeah,
like, yeah, it was that very much a like cool. I'm like, I'm on rails, and I feel like I'm accomplishing something, which is making this little alien look cool. So
yeah.
I haven't done it as much since then because
I can
it's
only get I can
life
only
got
get into
busy.
like I can only get into like very repetitive things. I played a lot of Fall Guys once it released because
As did I.
that game's so repetitive.
It is. Yeah, that was
But what,
I'm not much of a competitive gamer. I did get into Fall Guys for a brief period. I think because at least when it first launched, I liked how it was well designed from a gameplay standpoint that you could basically like accidentally win.
yeah,
It was like the first time you ever played it.
yeah,
I think it has since changed, but
yeah. There's some they're like there are people who sweat over that game.
oh, I know it. I have a good friend of mine was a streamer for quite a while, and like, yeah,
Hmm.
he did a lot of Fall Guys streaming, and like, yeah, he was doing some tournaments and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, this is already, I'm stressed out watching this. I think that's why I don't like anything. I'm naturally not a competitive person, just at all. Like, I never played sports. Um, I I've been training in martial arts for over a decade, but like only for myself. I'm like not interested in doing like tournaments or grappling or anything like that. Like I just like to learn. Um, and then yeah, like when I play video games, like it's all like give me a lonely like 40-hour solo narrative. And like that's what I'll dig into. But like I'm not playing Call of Duty.
Yeah. Anyways, have you gotten any have you gotten any professional reviews for the album yet?
We had one. Kyle had a connect with Matt at Dead Rhetoric, which was interesting too because like he's more of a I think Matt's natural inclination with heavy music is a bit more kind of like thrash and like
Hmm.
classic heavy metal kind of thing. So it really was sort of like, oh, I mean, I don't know if you'll really like this, but here it is. And he responded really positively to
Oh,
it. And
nice.
which I mean, I think is the mark of any good critic anyway,
Hmm.
of being able to again kind of drop those shackles of like, oh, these are the subgenres I like and say like, no, I want to listen to something with that open mind of trying to understand what is trying to be accomplished with the art and how successful was that done.
Hmm.
Um, so he had a really favorable review of it, which was very kind of him. He and I had an interview as well. Uh, I think he just published that a week or so ago. But we had a long chat about things and it was a good conversation. So yeah, it's I feel like as a DIY band that is obviously pretty unknown, it's tough to kind of crack that initial wall of press coverage.
Hmm.
Just because and I don't fault anyone or any outlet for it because it's everything is for clicks and impressions and no one covering us is going to get much engagement because no one knows what we are. Um, we'll keep hammering it and keep trying to push it, in terms of, yeah, like press coverage, playlisting, all that kind of stuff. We had a few pop up through the turmoil cycle as well of folks picking up, whether it be adding stuff to playlists or just talking about the EP, which was very nice. So I'm hoping the same happens with the Reflecting Grave, but all we can really do is put it out there and hope that the response, and certainly try to cold call as much as we can, but
Hmm.
cold calling can be tough. We had some help with in terms of publicity, like seeding the publicity ahead of launch, but it was still didn't yield anything. But that's okay. We'll keep trying to get new ears whenever we can.
Yeah. So speaking of having to do it DIY and independently, I was talking to you and Kyle before the basement show in May, and at the time you're saying that you were kind of shopping around for labels, but
Hmm.
ultimately it looks like you didn't pick one.
Hmm.
Um, is there a reason for that?
I no interest.
Okay.
To put it bluntly, we didn't really expect there would be.
It was
'Cause
just,
again, there's not that much for us to offer. I mean, beyond obviously music that we think is good,
Mhm,
but understanding that it's a business. And we got a few responses to like we solicited a lot, and certainly there's a lot of labels who don't even take unsolicited submissions at this point because it's that would be multiple
mhm,
people's full-time jobs sifting through that kind of stuff if labels of a certain threshold were open to that. But we put out stuff as much as in avenues that we thought are places we would fit, because we also weren't just blasting to literally every name we could think of. We wanted to be purposeful in anyone that we were soliciting in hopes that and thoughts that from our perspective it could be potentially a good fit, but I ended up not getting any traction on that, which is fine. We did I did have some consultation sessions. I talked with Nico, who plays guitar for the band Kardashev,
mhm,
a band that we all enjoyed, and I happened to see at one point him advertising kind of some consultation services specifically around like that kind of DIY growth. And it was appealing to us because looking at bands like Kardashev's trajectory, like, like they're on Metal Blade now and they're not huge, but like they have a decent following and they've established themselves pretty well. And have done that similar to us in a way of like they don't like I don't think they played a show. They just played their first show in like a decade, like a few months ago. Like they don't play live. So we saw some kind of parallels there in terms of maybe not necessarily how much we want the band to grow in terms of like making it a business, but at least in terms of uh, reaching more listeners and just kind of growing awareness of the project. So I had some good conversations with him, and he really helped a lot with our. I mean, I really do kind of hate to call it a content strategy, but like it's 2025 and we live in in social media driven ecosystem, so that's what it is. Really kind of helped as an extra perspective for us to kind of like build out something that even doing this DIY with our own resources would allow us to give some more life to this album beyond just like the first month of release. You know, we have like a lot of playthroughs, which we've been posting. You know, we're prepping like some tablature releases of the songs. Just the other night, I did a full like kind of lyric breakdown of the whole record. So we've got a whole. Kyle's working on some Clone Hero content. I
Yes.
think will be coming within the next month or two. So just a lot of ideas and trying to do things that hopefully are engaging to anyone who's interested in what we're doing, but also like still authentic to who we are and like what we think is interesting and what we feel like augments the material well. You know, like we're not going to do something completely disingenuous for the sake of like getting TikTok views. As much
Yeah.
as it would probably help. It like we kind of want to toe that line of like, all right, let's kind of stay in people's thoughts and try to grab attention and try to get new attention, but like let's all try to still keep it in do it in a way that makes sense with kind of how we've established what the band is. So I think there will continue to be some experimentation and failures in that, but hopefully some successes too.
Yeah. What's been your biggest challenge about doing this album release cycle without a label?
I mean, money is an easy thing to say. You know, like stuff is expensive, so you know we theoretically would have liked to do like more music videos and have
Hmm.
like more physical release formats, and but lo and behold, all that stuff costs money. So like
What's
we,
what's been the most expensive thing?
well, I mean, recording the album itself was definitely the
Okay.
most expensive thing. Yeah.
Besides that.
Probably the music video for Lineage,
Okay.
because that was we did that with my friend Anthony Jarvis, who I've done several projects with over the years. You know, close with him. He and I trained jujitsu together. Like we have a strong personal relationship, but like he's excellent at what he does for videography. So like, you know, he's worked with Kill Switch. He's worked with Whitechapel. He went on tour with Agnostic Front as director of photography for the documentary about them. So he does big boy bands. So that he even made time to do something for us a couple times now because he did the Chain of Grief video for Turmoil as
Hmm.
well. But with this one, we wanted it to be more of a narrative, and so, but like with that comes budget, right? Of just even just the stuff we needed. Like he um, rented some, I believe they're anthropomorphic lenses, I think. Like if you
Anamorphic.
there we yeah, that's right. Anthropomorphic. That's very
Hmm.
yeah, anamorphic is what I was searching for. Thank you. Like yeah, a vintage one from like the 70s, like the kind of thing that, you know, I think like movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and
Hmm.
stuff like that were shot on. So it kind of helped give that layer of a cinematic feel to the video. Um, but yeah, he did it's but you know, that kind of work doesn't come cheap. So
Hmm.
it's uh, even if you're working with your friends, you know, people need to be paid what they're worth. So
Oh yeah, of
we have
course.
we have more ideas of some stuff we want to do with him, but we'll see when budget allows to do so.
This is just something like I've heard from other people, but I noticed that you have color pressings of your vinyl, at
Hmm.
least like for pre-order.
Yep.
I've other bands have said like we're not like we can't do colored pressings because that's expensive.
Hmm.
What is the so like you did like a like I just have your Bandcamp open now so I can
Yeah.
get the numbers right. You have like 100 of them.
Yep.
And how much does it cost to press 100 colored vinyls?
It was way more reasonable than I thought. I think
Oh,
it because and I mean like I'm assuming the quality is going to be good. But the particular, you know, we went through a partner of the same company that we use for digital distro, CD Baby, and It seems like the prices for vinyl production have like kind of circled back around to getting a bit more reasonable again,
Okay.
both in price and timeline. Because I mean, I know when I mentioned our friend Brian who
Hmm.
his project Oak. I know he did. I think the last Oak record he pressed was like closer to the pandemic, and I
Hmm.
feel like it took him like 2 years to get those, and was super expensive. Whereas this one, it's like I think it was roughly like a 60-day-ish turnaround, maybe 90. So a lot more reasonable. Like we tried to give ourselves some wiggle room with like the actual release window and everything, so that we'll hopefully have them well beforehand. Um, but it seems like it's that part of the manufacturing has kind of opened up again in terms of options to get things a bit more affordable. Now we did a color option. We have the opaque blue. Because that was one available. Like it's the way they had it set up was basically like there's essentially like stocked colors that you can use, or like you can do a custom one, but like that's what starts to really elevate price
Hmm.
per unit. And that's something we had to be conscious of understanding that, we want it to be a quality package, and a quality product. So that if someone feels like they're getting their money's worth, and that it's also representative of the quality that we feel the album has, but also realizing that like we can't charge like $40 for a record for a band our size. Like no one's gonna buy that. So we had to kind of keep costs in mind there. But it's I'm pretty used to sourcing with like production vendors for merchandise
Okay.
and stuff. It's a role I've always had in bands I've been in. I've kind of always taken on that merch management portion of things. By nature of what I do for a living, of like designing that kind of stuff for bands, and even like on a larger scale, like working for businesses with like trade show displays and stuff like that. Like I'm pretty used to that kind of vendor coordination to know sort of what's needed, and the ways to find the best options, especially for pricing, and so that we don't end up upside down with spending a ton of money to get something printed, and then cool, it now sits in boxes in a basement and is wasted money.
All right. Are there any funny behind the scenes tidbits from this album release or the recording of it?
I mean, we recorded the guitars twice, so that was fun.
What happened?
We that was the portion that we recorded ourselves. Yeah, we did drums with our producer Shane. I did vocals with our producer Shane. But again, to save some cost, we did all the guitar and bass ourselves. And we were deep into the mixing process when Shane reached out to me and and like he called me one afternoon, and he's like, I think you need to redo the rhythm guitars. I was like, which I mean, it's like we want to hear that. But it was like enough weird small things, which it's like no one thing on its own would have necessarily been that big of a deal, but it's just like a bunch of little, just weird uh technical issues kind of culminated into like it just didn't n- no one probably would have noticed that much, but like we noticed, and it was kind of like this could be better. And it's like we either leave it how it is, or like we take the time to do this again and know that we won't look back on the album in 3 years and think, oh man, I wish we had done that differently.
Hmm.
So we did a lot of troubleshooting, and redid redid all of the rhythm guitar tracks in actually a pretty short amount of time. Probably since we had already done it already. And
Hmm.
so the guys were pretty tight on it. Um, but it's yeah, and then honestly, that was the best decision we could have made, because then even hearing the initial mixes after we did that, us and our producer were all like, "Oh, okay, yeah, no, this is night and day better." Like these guitars need to sound huge on this album, and they just didn't with how they originally were. They that wasn't going to happen. So
Was it just like poor recording in conditions or?
a little bit, like there was some electronic interference issues. There was some like multi-tracking with like different guitars, and like they're like the two guitars we used like had enough little differences between them that you could kind of tell, and like both Dan and Ricky were playing, and so and just it's I feel like it's one of the unspoken things in a lot of metal bands that like if you have two guitar players, one is really light-handed and one's really heavy-handed. It just seems to be
Okay.
the nature of how it happens. And we have not that I don't think Ricky's really light-handed, but like Dan's heavier-handed than Ricky is.
Okay.
So like we ended up like Dan just like quad tracked everything, and it's just like the consistent. So like Ricky still plays little leads, but yeah, like all the rhythm stuff was Dan quad tracking at this point, and it just sounds a lot tighter doing it that way, and it's kind of those little things you don't think about till you actually sit down to record something, and then you have it under that really intense microscope, and you realize these small adjustments that can be made that have very compounding impacts on the final product.
Well, I'm glad you did that. I know you
Thanks.
said you have a record release show coming up.
Mhm.
When and where is that one?
That is November 22nd at the Lowell location of Kodo Asian Fusion.
Hmm.
So we will be up there. We're going to play the record in its entirety, which we have not done live before. So that will be fun. And then Graveborn, Swarm of Eyes, and Nugreth are playing that show with us. So we were able to assemble the whole bill ourselves, and get our friends on it, and get our friends, but like also make sure that it's a lineup that is complementary and makes sense, especially as a four-band bill. So we're excited about that one. That will be one of the last shows of the year for us for sure. I think we might have one more coming up in December, but we also do, since we don't play a ton, we try to strategically book. So like, yeah, we're not leaving the Northeast too much, but we're at least not like playing in Worcester every month. Like we're gonna be
Yeah.
it kind of at least like an hour plus away from each show to
Yeah.
hit some slightly different markets.
Have you played at Kodo before?
Yep, we
Okay.
did. Yeah, we did. We played up there late last summer was the last time we were that
Salem
way.
or Lowell?
Lol, we haven't played at the original Salem
Yeah.
location.
So I do like I like Kodo Lowell. I was a little sad they don't have a full service kitchen anymore because I
Yeah,
was
the food
pretty
is really
hungry
good.
last time I was there.
Food is really good there too. Yeah, and it's definitely it's not as it doesn't have the dive charm that Salem has.
Yeah, I like Salem's location a lot.
Yeah.
They at least have the same mocktail menu, or at least a similar one.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
like
I love when a place has a good mocktail. I'm straight edge, so I'm all about mocktails
yeah.
whenever we play.
Okay,
I think it's
cool.
and another good spot. Alchemy in Providence has a really good mocktail menu. I was
Oh,
stoked the first
I
time we
wouldn't have
played there.
thought because that place is very nightclub.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I was surprised when I realized they had a pretty deep mocktail selection there.
Yeah, because like most places don't, and like
Nope.
I just accept it.
Hmm.
Like O'Brien's, like you get polar seltzers, and I love
Which
and
even that's a win.
that's the one I wish Ralph's had those. It's Worcester. It's cheap.
Yeah, it is.
What are we doing?
It is. It does feel like an oddly anti-Worcester thing that Ralph's does not carry polar. I live half a mile from Ralph's. I love Ralph's. But yeah, that's it's weird they don't
You
have
got
that.
water, you got the non-alcoholic Bud Lights, and you got,
Oh
of course, the Ralph's burger. Unless you're like a vegan straight edge guy, then you're really,
no, I'm not.
really
I am not.
cooked.
I am not. I am not vegan. I am not vegan. I will indulge in the Ralph's burger.
Cool. That is a pretty sick lineup for the album release show. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm ex I'm excited we were able to make that work, especially with like Graveborn is playing even more rarely than
Yeah,
us now. Now that their vocalist John has moved to Arizona,
they just need to do an instrumental show.
they almost were going to for this, but it did work out where John is going to be around. So
Yeah, because they're in that nice weird deathcore niche that you are.
I think so. It's funny, like Yeah, we're great friends with those guys. Personally, like even like before this band existed, like we
Yeah.
all I've known Jesse and John specifically for a long time. Um, but I do think it works out that I think sonically we work really well together in terms of the like kind of prog minded. I think they lean a bit more death metal, whereas we lean a
Hmm.
bit more black metal. But it's still it complements each other well. And they record with the same producer we do. They also work with Shane Frisbee.
Nice.
And I know they have new stuff on the way as well. We were there. They've been working on new stuff as long as we were working on The Reflecting Grave. So
Yeah,
I
I
guess we won. We got ours out
I
first.
love I love Graveborn. I've had Chris on the show. He's such a like he's he has the podcast voice, so he is great to have
Yes, he
on.
does.
Um, get a if you're listening, Chris, get a move on. I want the new Graveborn album. I have
Please.
simple requests.
I mean, I think it sounds like they're gonna play some new stuff at the Kodo show. So
Nice. Once again, thanks to Adam Cutler for coming on the show. My last pitch is that The Reflecting Grave is a Name Your Price album on Bandcamp, and it even has some vinyl and merch bundles. They do try to pay fairly even when bands are that generous. Catch Fallen Monarch at their album release show later this month if you can. Support local music. New England is full of bands like Fallen Monarch who put out quality work independently for those precious few Bandcamp dollars. Don't go outside to smoke during opening band sets. You know the drill. I'm Theo Morgan, and have a good night. All right. Um, Thank you for coming on.
of course, thank you for having me. Like I said, it's been getting some press has been a challenge. So I'm really we're excited that you were open to chatting.
Yeah, I think you were right about the cold approach working because this happened by Kyle cold approaching me at the Panzerfaust show.
Nice.
Um,
Kyle is our social butterfly.
yeah, I mean, I think it helps that I already knew him, but he hadn't mentioned much about the podcast except for like vaguely, oh, that'd be nice. And then the album was released and he's like, hey.
Yeah, we're trying to be a bit more direct about it now in terms of like, hey, we got a big old thing to promote. Please talk to us.
Yeah. Um, Moral of the story, your friends are probably listening to you.
Which
Your
is
real
good.
friends will make it work.
Yeah, true. But it all I think it all does continue to speak to the sense of community that's here, and really the music scene at large. New England, I think, in terms of folks lifting each other up and just wanting to be involved with cool stuff and meet cool people. So it's a nice thing for us to be a part of.
Yeah, it's been, and like on my end, like it's incredible the sort of people who will talk to you and to like eat and like for hours on end.
Yeah.
You've been a wonderful guest.
Thank you.
I feel like I'm walking away with a newfound appreciation, or I'll at least read the lyric sheet this time.
I take no offense if no one actually pays attention to the lyrics, because I actually, even as a vocalist, I don't pay attention to a ton of lyrics, but
Yeah.
if you do, I appreciate that even more.
Yeah, you know what? I kind of miss CD liner notes because like it did give a lot of scarcity to music, but like I cherish the CDs I'd have and I'd rip out the liner notes. I'd be like looking at the lyric sheet throughout the whole listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like the only lyrics I've like truly memorized are for like the first 10 albums I've ever owned or whatever.
Oh yeah, there's the well, yeah. I think anything in recent years, like I don't like I have a hard time remembering my lyrics. I don't need to try to memorize other people's lyrics.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It was a
Yep.
pleasure.